Mhm. Hello, 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 hello. So, I have something to talk about. And right now I'm recording this on my laptop because my phone isn't working where I am. So, the topic of conversation today has to do with your divine light. It has to do with darkness versus evil. Evil. All right. But first, let me get into the first topic, which has to do with divine light. Okay. I know a lot of my readings, a lot of my advice out there has to do with protecting your sacral energy, okay, from being harvested. And when I say be harvested, a lot of people don't know what am I talking about when I'm talking about who is harvesting and for what, okay? The truth of the matter is there's a lot of we call it demonic entities, those who decided to go against the light of God, which is founded in truth and in nature, okay? And giving respect to one's mother, one's creator. There is an entity out there which has to exist in order for every individual soul to make a clear, decisive decision on whom they will be serving, okay? And has everything to do with how you evolve in as a soul, okay? In whichever lifetime you incarnate, okay? So that is why it always seems like good versus bad and all these other polarities, right? There is a oneness, but that has to exist in order for your soul to actually go through a journey, okay? Now, with that being said, just like if you everyone has their own soul test, okay, there are people who consider themselves to be cheaters, people who only stall their karmic disposition, and time is just going. They stall by just buying more time, by borrowing the light of others, okay? That means they are refusing to go to evolve. They're choosing not to evolve for whatever reason. They want to hold on to whatever past trauma, and they use that as a link to actually get people who are upcoming souls. They try to deter them from the light of God, which is based in truth. Okay, so there are cults out there, people who are not ready yet to, I guess, bask in the light of God, which is the purification process of one's soul based on truth, meaning you have to see yourself as a holistic person. Okay, your shadows as well as your light. Okay, there's people who can walk in the shadows as well as walk into the light. There's some people who went really deep into the shadow and their consciousness, when they start really getting into divine oneness and taking accountability for the reality that they project and the reality of what was desired in their heart, they start realizing that everything that they've done to others, they've done to themselves. Okay? And so they have to play both the victim as well as the um, perpetrator. Okay? And they don't want to come to terms with that. And so what they do is they start forming these cult-like following with other entities who are on those levels. You know, they say this thing of like, what sin is greater than the other. There is a hierarchy to this. Okay, the only thing is that you do have to give your will. Your will must be done. Okay, so the contents of your heart, the desires of your heart will be the things that you experience here in the earthly realm. And then you make other people's victims to this, meaning that you inject your darkness, your desire onto others, okay, whether or not they are ignorant, in an ignorant state, okay, because if they had the eyes to see, they would not have agreed to be in that situation, okay. If you think about it in this way, it's kind of like when you have older people trying to seduce younger people because the younger people don't have the knowledge yet, right? They're still in a training environment. So they may entice a child with sweets, They may entice a young adult with liquor. They may entice and beings who don't fully know themselves yet, have not have their frontal lobe fully developed yet, to do certain things that's against the light and purity of God. Okay, so that is where the manipulation comes from. And then when the victims come of a certain age, they start feeling the guilt of the action because they felt the separation, right, engulfed in the darkness of someone who was older, who was more mature, who had more knowledge. Okay, so this is why there's these very pivotal times in your soul ascension and your growth as a person where you're most vulnerable. Okay, because you're in a transition period from one state of being to another. Okay, children go through this, right, until they become adults, and this is why you have some adults who have trouble embodying adulthood because they're fragment pieces of themselves that were trapped in someone else's darkness. Okay, these are the children who were taken advantage of because they did not have the knowledge yet. They weren't being protected by the communities. They weren't being protected by their village. They weren't being protected by their parents. Okay, so as they get older, they always have a fragment of themselves lost somewhere that they have to go back and retrieve somehow. Okay, through their own evolutionary process. Okay, and there are angels who are set there to help them if they so choose, or they can also turn to embody the evil. Okay, this is why I also want to talk about the difference between darkness and evil. Okay, evil is just the opposite of life. Okay, I don't mean as in death and rebirth process. I mean it is the entity that wants to inflict more hurt. It's the entity that wants to go against the light of God. Okay, but there's no such thing as really going against, because everyone has to meet their maker at some point. Everyone has to face the light of truth of their own soul. This is where people go through the dark nights of the soul. Some people don't like going through the dark nights of the soul because it's a true reflection of oneself. Okay, and not only that, but they have to have forgiveness for themselves, and they have to have forgiveness for others who've done things to them. That is a hard thing. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing, because the only way you could break the cycle of hurt people is, one, to choose to do better, and then two, take accountability for your actions that you have done, and then also offer forgiveness. Okay? And depending on where you're at with that, you may want to further go into the judgment of the trauma, but then you start sinking yourself. Okay? And then you become the very thing that you hate. Okay? So you've seen this in plenty archetypes and different storylines. So just be mindful of that. Okay? So it's not about trying to take sides with the perpetrator, but it's the idea of healing one's heart, going through that process, which is very hard to do, in order to get to the other side of it so you could carry the light of God. Okay? And then those who do not want to face themselves, who want to go deeper into evil, what they do is they form cults with other people who are on that same level of demonic nature. And then they offer entities lights of other ignorant people who are walking around, or who they can borrow and mask themselves with the light of God, okay, through deception. Okay, so which means that they lie to themselves first. They have to lie to themselves. When I lived in California, there was a lot of people who try to convince me that they were black. I don't know why that was a thing out there, but it's almost like they want to live in pretend land, because they know underneath there's a fundamental entity that they are feeding through deception. So they look for people, they recruit people who may not have the full scope. Those people may not have the knowledge yet. Okay, and they get recruited into these circles. There's a lot of these people who do this with babalawo nonsense, think in that sense, right? Where they try to steal your light and to feed a evil entity, so that they can go and avoid their karmic disposition longer. Okay, So they just build like a big, think about it as a system where it is a pyramid scheme, right? So there's the ones on the bottom trying to serve the ones at the top. The ones at the top have the most to lose. They have the most karmic deficit. Okay, so they'll keep you busy doing all this other nonsense work while you're feeding this entity through your energy field, right? And you can feel your energy being siphoned to feel. Okay, and you can see this through, they might promote you to do a lifestyle that's not natural. It's not a natural lifestyle to God, right? So then you start trying to, you will physically see your energy being siphoned, okay, into this evil entity. And you will not know, you would start doing things outside, unnatural things. Like, for example, getting implants, getting work done, trying to look again to an entity of falsehood, deception. Okay? And that's how they subtly do this to you. Okay? So just be mindful of that. Now, when we talk about the darkness, we're talking, you need to be able to go into darkness. Okay, darkness is not the problem. Is what emerges from the darkness is the true test, right? Which lights are what downloads are you getting when you go into your darkness? Because it all has to do with self. I know everyone has a camera, so they turn on the camera and they get on here and we just talk and talk and talk. But but you have to know everything that you're saying. It's a double-edged sword. Okay, all we're doing is illustrating consciousness into the web of consciousness. So if you're going to put on the camera, make sure it's something that is worth to be said. Okay? Not only that, you're clogging the airways with nonsense. Okay? For those who don't have the eyes to see or the discernment to know when they're being distracted. Okay? But like I said, that is purposely done so. Sometimes people may even offer you to the entity. But as long as you're doing your personal work, you can break free from those contracts. Right? Because you did not raise your hand to serve any entity of falsehood or deception. Okay? And you must be very mindful of how you think, which thought forms are taking seed in your heart. Okay? This is why you must do a lot of self-work, a lot of spiritual work in isolation. Okay? Separate from anybody else's distractions, anybody else's karmic disposition, so you can see yourself. Okay? And call back your energy so no one else is hiding under your light of God. Okay? Because there's people who are very good at deceiving. Very good. Hollywood lifestyle. They will cloak themselves in the light of others. They will study you. They'll try to mimic you, right? And mimic your spirit, but it will not be able to sustain. Okay? So they will constantly need feeding. They're constantly going to need feeding. Okay? And then for you not to get into a state of people pleasing, okay? Because this stuff is really real. The spiritual warfare is really real, okay? Everyone should be able to stand on their own karmic disposition, all right? So it doesn't matter how much readers you go to. We're just here as reflections, okay? You cannot maintain my light, all right? No one can maintain your own, no one can siphon your energy and maintain it. All right. At some point, they have to do their own work and face their own demons. Okay. But sometimes those demons come with a cost. There's a movie that I want to recommend. It's called The Postman Always Rings Twice. I think that's what it's called. The Postman. I think was his name. Jack Nicholson is the guy. I'm really bad with names of actors, but I believe that's his name. Okay. The guy who also played I think he was the original Joker in the Batman movies. I know everyone. It's not Jack Nicholson. It's not him. That's the guy from that other series. Well, I'm really bad at names. I probably put it in the caption just so everyone can see it. But it's called the Postman Always Rings Twice. Okay, and it talks about this woman who was married to this drunkard guy. They owned a bed and breakfast on alongside of some podunk town. And this drifter comes in. He was a big city guy. He comes. He ends up sleeping with the wife. And this drifter decide to kill the husband. Okay. And then it was this whole thing. And then they went through the court of law, which again is just a buffer for karmic disposition. Okay. Because nature is waiting. There's some people who can never stand foot in nature. Okay. because they would die just like that, because their karmic disposition would meet them immediately. All right? But the laws of man, especially as you go west, it serves as a karmic buffer. And they use money as the energy transfer in hopes that everything balances out. This is why some of them would actually do charity work and trying to balance the scales and blah, blah, blah. But there's certain things that you can't balance, meaning a life for a life, an eye for an eye, right? Laws of Ma'at, right? All these things that were ancient things, they still are real things to this day. It's just that some people choose to manipulate the system, and some people would choose to take the ignorant in order to serve this entity. Okay? Now I'm going to talk about the husbands and the wives, especially when it comes to this legal thing, right? Now, prior to actually standing in front of some religious institution or any governmental contract thing, as long as you sleep with a woman, you become linked in spirit. That's why you might have multiple spiritual husbands if you're not cleansing out yourself, cleansing out your vessel, cleansing out your spirit. Okay? Because naturally, by natural law, once you enter someone's body, you become linked. You become bonded to them. Okay? If you conceive a child, you're bonded through that child. Meaning different parts of sequencing of the DNA can be channeled and you can actually communicate. This is where people used to have telecommunication. We actually still have it now. It's just that we get distracted, that we weren't able to like pinpoint it because there's so many distractions, especially if you live in the Babylon kind of frequency, okay, which is all around the world. So it has to do with you and your resonance. All right. Marriages. Wives become a way to purify their counterparts. Okay, the holy waters that women carry can purify. Not in the case of if you, like I said, if grape is involved. Okay, I'm saying it that not to be so harsh, okay? But if that's involved, right, that alone is a frequency of karmic disposition. So if you take down a woman and you go against her will, okay, it's a done deal for you. Okay? You then graduate to the other lower levels, okay, of existence. Okay, and you're going to be on that level with those kind of demons, and they're going to take that from you as well. Okay, because whatever you do to the divine feminine, you're going to get back. Okay? Offer your own resonance. Okay, so this is why people, if you think about it, when people go to jail, right, and they're like, do you know what they do to people like you in jail? Yeah, that is just a karmic disposition thing, right? Because where there's one demon, there's always a bigger, badder demon. Okay, so choose your demonic natures accordingly. All right? Or I should say really your spirits, not just your demonic natures, because demonic natures and thought forms are really just spirits that you can choose to embody into your heart, okay, through your own desires and what it is you want to experience, okay? But just remember, everything that you put out, you get back. There's no escaping it. You're just buying time, okay? Until you get reincarnated again into another life, so hopefully you remember all your lessons. All right? So this is why it's also important to take care of your children, by the way, okay? Because they're also going to be pathways for you to come back here. So teach them the things that you did not learn. Be better, okay? Even if you've stumbled, and you have children, make sure you're imparting wisdom onto them so they don't have your whole bloodline perpetuating more lives of evil and sin against oneself, which is sin against another man, okay? Or woman. Don't get caught up on the semantics, okay? Now, marriages, back to that. Okay? What you start seeing now is that your husband, which is really like, I'm not going to get into slavery, but slavery, right? When you make an oath for better or for worse, he can go out there and do whatever. Then he gets a trapment of some kind of evil spirit. If he makes a deal with an evil spirit and then comes and lays next to you, sleeps with you, you then become bonded by your own oath. By your own oath. And some women are fully aware of this, okay? But because they're under the frequency of, I'm going to say the word patriarchy, okay? Because they decided to value man instead of valuing God, Okay? To be in competition with their sisters instead of showing the light of God. Okay? They've bound themselves to these men, and these men, some of these men carry great deals of darkness. Okay? And they shield that darkness by sleeping with women who are ignorant. And so they present themselves to you with the light of the women that are sacred women, who have just been moving in ignorance. And then you choose to contract with these men, especially if you know that you have a competitive spirit against other women, or truths that you want to see glorify yourself over others. Okay? You will then contract this demonic energy into your system. Okay? All right. Usually by the way of lust. Okay? Wanting to be pleased, wanting to be devoted to, all of this other bullshit. Want to be worshipped. This is how the entity gets its way into your heart. Okay? This is the way. When you want others to submit to you instead of moving divinely, that's a trap. All right? So now you're with this man who, in his worst, contracts all these entities, all these demons attracted to him because he doesn't take care of himself. He doesn't respect or honor his mother. He doesn't respect or honor nature. He litters. Okay? And again, people can pretend, but they can only pretend so much. This is why you must starve them. So you can see people for who they really are. Outside of the surface, at their core, at their being. Okay? Now you lay with them, and then they borrow your light again. And then they go off in the world because you have made this deal with the devil, if you will. Okay? You deal because now you're taking on their karmic disposition of not only them, but their entire bloodline. Woo! This is why you must walk away. There's not enough of currency, as in financial money, that is going to pay that price, because everything happens in spirit first. So if you have a rich in spirit, you're going to be really wealthy on the land. Okay? And no matter what system you're adopted into. Okay? Because the will of God must be done. So what is in your will? All right? I've had women come to me who, I guess, admired my spirit beforehand, because your spirit speaks before you do. Okay? They admired my spirit, and then they tried to, I guess, contract with me in order so they can siphon my energy to manipulate men or to manipulate other women. And that will never work. Okay? Because my particular spirit that I embody cherishes and loves freedom. Ominida. Okay? And so I give everyone the freedom of choice and to choose love over nonsense, anything else. Okay? Which is fear or lack frequency. Find the beauty within yourself, and that is what's going to shine bright. Okay? You can never siphon my energy. You'll never get my yay. Okay, if for passage, when we all go to see Divine Mother, okay, if you have any of this entity within you, any of it, lust, okay? Now, there are pleasures of life, okay, and I'm not against pleasure. Don't be retarded, okay? It's not about being against pleasure. It's about knowing one's own power and finding pleasure in that. Okay? As soon as you start getting into competitive energy with any of my sisters, any of my women, my divine feminine, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. It's a wrap. Unless we are tied by blood. In which we have to have the patience. Anything tied to you by blood, you must have the patience to ascend it. Okay? Oh. So yes, back to that evil, the darkness, the spirit that's trying to hide. It tries to hide in the embodiment of other vessels. People who literally spend their entire lifetime trying to learn hypnosis, okay, in order to trap certain souls, okay. Because then if they can get whatever weakness that you have, they can siphon. They can actually send their spirit to. They scatter their spirit to embody into your vessel and do certain things, okay, in order to live on, because they know that it's only a matter of time. And when whoever that master is that they're serving, okay, the one of the demonic nature, the one that goes against the creator and freedom and light, okay, whoever it is that they're serving, they will come and collect, and depending on their karmic disposition, they're going to get it back. They're just trying to outrun with time, okay. Nothing that you do here in the physical world, there's always going to be a balance. Always going to be a balance. Okay, so you can't sell another person's soul. Okay, and I'm grateful to see the day in which that system collapsed. Okay, let everyone stand in their own light. Okay. If you're listening to this, you must also remember the power of your own will. Anytime you keep succumbing your will to someone else or an entity outside of yourself, you're giving away your divine right and divine breath of God. Okay? If you wish to control others and all this other stupid stuff just so you can have some kind of pleasure or egoic stroke, again, it's going to collapse. Okay? It's only a matter of time. It has always been just a matter of time. Okay? Yeah, you can't sell people. Okay? You can't sell people. You cannot force their will. You cannot put them under some kind of spell and then say that it was from their own free will. It wasn't. Consciousness is very contagious. And if you had more knowledge in someone and you choose to manipulate them with it, you're still gonna find that the banks of that. They will be set free. They will be set free. Okay? In this life and any other life. Okay? So if you listen to this, please be mindful of who you're allowing into your temple. Be mindful who you're letting into your home, which is your second outer layer temple. Okay? Who you're allowing in your spiritual field. Okay? Mind your thoughts. Mind your heart. Any seed that's planted in your heart, please, from thought forms in the ether, please assess them, especially before you start taking action toward them. Okay? If you're ignorant and unsure, just be patient for everything to be revealed. Okay? Be patient for everything to be revealed. Okay? And to my women who are bounded into the slavery system because of whatever trauma that you're not working through, I pray that you gain the healing and that you are cleansed and washed anew. Okay? Cleansed and washed anew in pure waters. Okay? That your own water starts to flow. Okay? Do not follow man, follow God. Do not follow lust. Do not follow your earthly pleasures. God lives in your heart. Because that was the first thing of your creation. Okay? It was your first light of God. First pulse of God was here in your heart. First organ that was created in your mother's womb when she decided to have you. Okay? Or to allow your soul to have the journey here in order to ascend. Okay? Before we go back into spirit. Okay? So when you follow that heart space, which is your desires, you must be able to go into the shadows, into the darkness, to find the root cause of why that desire is. Okay? That's where the lights get turned on in the dark. Okay? That's where the truth is revealed. Okay? A lot of us were facing abandonment issues. A lot of us were facing, it could be any abandonment. Physical, emotional abandonment, protection, the lack of protection when you were younger. Okay? And I'm sorry. Okay? But you have the most to transmute, and that brings forth the most power to yourself. Okay? So Seek the healing that is required. Do not be deceived by the false light of man. Okay? Any light that a man has, it's from the women that love him. Okay? The women that respect him. Okay? Because that's our job. It's our job to ascend the DNA strands. Okay? Through love and nurturing. But there's tough love. All right? And also truth. All right? So we can be encouraging, we can be inspiring, but it's more important that we are truthful. Okay? And allow the men to be men, to rise to the occasion. I believe in them. Okay? You will never be able to use the true divinity of a woman to deceive a man. Because remember, that man comes from a woman. Okay? I don't give a fuck about whatever thing in your childhood that caused you to want this or desire that. I don't give a fuck. Sometimes some of you guys even have sons. And it's almost as if you forget that those sons are also going to be with daughters. Lest they choose to end their bloodline. Okay? So, however you treat these men is exactly how that son is going to witness. And it's going to dictate what kind of man he's going to be. Okay? However you treat yourself will also dictate on how he treats the women. So prioritize your happiness, prioritize your self-respect, and allow all the cards to fall where they may. You cannot save your children from their own personal lessons. Okay? So if you decide to adopt some kind of controlling nature or abusive nature, that is exactly what the children will embody. Then they're making their lessons, their own karmic lessons, to be a little bit more difficult. Okay? Love yourself first. Let them see what love for oneself looks like so that they can emulate it and embody it when they become adults. Okay? The whole purpose of this channel is to have high frequency families, high frequency as an individual, balanced individuals, masculine, feminine, and inner child, and then also that in return will be represented externally from us. It's just part of universal law. You can't have what you don't. You cannot be what you don't already have. You can't have what you don't already embody. Yeah. Okay? It's kind of the concept as within, so without. If you're balanced with inside, if you're not angry on the inside, you will not display this on the outside. Okay? So if anything in your reality that you do not like, you must assess why is it there, and then take accountability and empower yourself to change it. Okay? Because of God's will. So what is it that you will for yourself? What is the reason for the will? Protect your heart at all costs. Okay? Get out of those contracts. Get out of those spiritually binding contracts that do not serve you. Okay? Because if it's not fulfilling to you, you're going to be looking for it to be fulfilled by other entities outside of you. Ones that you think that you're superior than, or you have a little bit more knowledge. Okay? And then you're going to be walking around with that same darkness and karmic disposition as your partner. I don't just mean this for the women. I mean this for the husbands as well. If you know that you have initially gained an attraction to a woman based off of any lustful desires, okay, but not one that you're actually operating in your heart space and you guys both haven't transcended, and she still decides that she wants to move with the evil or against oneself, separate yourself. Right? You have an X chromosome. You've come from a mother. Okay? So in your isolation, when you're praying for the best for yourself, if lust is still keeping you down, you're not ready to ascend into your heart space. You can't magnetize a better reality for yourself. Okay? It's very, very important. Okay? I know a lot of people, the red pill community, which I think is already dismantled and crumbled because the light of God would shine through any bullshit. Okay? You think that you need to have multiple sexual partners just to experience. No. You internally already knew what you wanted here. Okay? And if you honor that connection when you know you don't something doesn't feel good, and then you isolate it, starve it out until you get back your balance and realize what you like and don't like, and don't force yourself in situations because you have some kind of attachment to whatever trauma thing that happened to you when you were younger. Okay, you naturally ascend and you naturally do better. It's a choice. Okay, that's why we promote healing. That's why we work with inner child work and trauma and correcting this, because we want to get you out of that frequency into a higher level frequency. You cannot have what you don't already have. Okay, so shout out to neuro. Okay, it's the same kind of information, just repackaged in different bites to get you guys to get us to understand it and embody it fully. Okay? I don't do any contracts with any entities trying to manipulate mankind or womankind. I don't. Okay? We don't serve the ego. All right. That's it.